This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so
Yep.
we'll call the meeting to order. And first item of business is the meeting minutes from our August meeting. Chris sent this out end of last week. And so put a motion to accept the meeting minutes as written. Somebody want to second? Okay, great. All right.
If you want me to go for, so just a quick update on the landscapes plan. You guys have the final plan in front of you. This was adopted last Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Yes, long time coming. Thank you to everyone who's participated in this, taking your time to review it, all of your enthusiasm. Thank you from, the beginning. You guys, I think we're at the first meeting that we had back last June.
Sarah.
Yeah. I know I'm excited for this. Staff is excited for this. The board is excited for this, and I assume you guys are excited. So I think this is something I printed a couple copies here for you guys. You can take those with you, and then I have one for Derek.
Beautiful.
And yeah, we will go from here. And I think there's a lot in here that, as Frank will talk about in just a little bit with our work plan, that we'll kind of dive into early on. And then I think there's also a lot in here that'll take some time. So we're hoping that this is, a good plan that lasts a while, doesn't get dusty. And thank you.
The pictures are just the best. I just think the pictures are great.
I really like that there's pictures from residents in there. I think that was really cool. Like that front, that the front cover was submitted as part of our photo survey we did last summer. And there's some other ones in here. I mean, we had cool pictures just of someone's backyard garden and things like that. Just, sort of special spaces. It helps because we only have so many pictures of the township. I go out when I can, and we've been doing so many publications and newsletters and things like that. You start to run out of photos, so it's nice to get.
This is right down the street from me.
I know, yeah, that's right on the corner.
You're pulling strings, huh, Marie?
Yeah.
Gotta be busy on your good side, huh?
That is really nice. Yeah. Cool.
So next item of business is how this work plan, how this landscapes plan intersects with our work plan for the coming year. Chris and I talked, and obviously, as an environmental advisory council, there's a lot of issues we can get involved in and probably will over time. But we thought, given that there are certain responsibilities that the EAC has that are outlined in the landscapes plan, that's probably where we should focus our attention, probably exclusively, I think, for the rest of this year and maybe into early next year, because there's a lot that we're responsible for doing. And so I think it makes sense to narrow our focus just on getting those tasks accomplished. And then, obviously, if people have ideas about other things we can work on, we can capture those ideas, but probably are not going to, for the remainder of this year, and I guess probably early next year, probably not going to spend a lot of time on anything other than our responsibilities that are in the landscape plan. So Chris and I talked, and what I asked him to do is basically boil down each task that we're responsible for into a single sentence. So that's what section A here under agenda item 5 is, that and I see us probably working on these sequentially, so we'll do each one as a group and then move on to the next one. So the first one is review and further develop the open space and agriculture place types. Then from that, once we've identified the types, we can then develop an open space map. And a lot of this will be, will require resources and from the township staff to do these things. Then once we have the map, we can identify on the map the priority resource protection areas. Then how do we then go about protecting those areas? So what do we need ordinances to do that? And then, all that comes together into an open space program.
Yeah. If I can add, one of the things that I forgot to put in your packets for tonight on goal number 1, the term place types. This came from the land use portion of the comprehensive plan. So open space is what we call a place type in the land use plan, and that's basically kind of taking the overarching, 100,000 foot view, look at land use categories of, residential, industrial, and so forth. Place types is another layer down where we're trying to look at what places that we have in the township, what places can we plan for the township, and then that ultimately influences kind of the more regulatory side of zoning. So open space is a place type, and that we have in the landscapes plan, we've identified kind of the almost like 9 uses of that place type. So that's kind of where we talk about expanding upon what's in the landscapes plan, getting some more, adding some more definition to that so that we can translate it into the regulatory side of things in our ordinances. And then agriculture on its own is also a place type that we introduced. And that's kind of taking some of the concepts we learned about ag in this plan and again, applying kind of definitions. So just clarity on what place types means.
So any comments on this work plan? Because we do have to present a work plan to the Board of Commissioners. So, we want to try to agree on what that work plan is tonight so that we can go ahead and present it. So comments, questions?
So I guess what I would ask is, I just want to repeat back to make sure I understand, is these are the top goals for now, for the end of this year, beginning of next year. And we're going to work on each one of these sequentially.
That would be the proposal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And, okay. All right, good.
And I think to Frank's point earlier, I still have all of the notes from our initial work sessions that we went through at the kind of middle of summer. So I see this this work plan being updated every year or whenever we need to. So a lot of that stuff we talked about earlier, as Frank pointed out, this is kind of when he and I went over this, we identified these as things that kind of need to happen to influence other pieces of implementing landscapes plan, other things that we talked about in the work plan at some of our last meetings. So I think probably another like workshop type of session, maybe early next year, to go through some of those older notes, see where we are in some of this stuff, just so everyone knows that we're not, throwing out everything that we looked at. I think in the last draft we had a lot more in here, but this is, I think, an attempt to kind of synthesize everything
Right.
down.
Would it make sense, and I don't want to add more work, but to do like a little mini Gantt chart like for this, like just to show?
Yeah, I can do that. We kind of had that in the last one with like
Right.
prioritizing, but I think this one we can actually add a little bit more detail to like at what stages, and maybe even start to think about meetings. Like for some of this, if we kind of focus one meeting on one of these goals.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be, but in a full Gantt chart, but just say like a high level overview of the schedule.
Yeah, I can definitely add it at the end. If anyone has any other feedback of what you would want to see in there, but I'm thinking kind of just scheduling it out. If this work plan moves forward, at I think we're targeting the October meeting of the Board of Commissioners, if we're all in agreement tonight on what this has in it. So then at the next October EAC meeting, we could potentially start on, goal number 1 and then move sequentially through that.
And to Tom's point, the good thing with a Gantt chart is we can put some deadlines to these things, and so we'll kind of have a schedule as well as just, instead of just nebulous plan.
That was the only thing I was gonna add, is maybe we can put like, how much time we should spend on each thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you would need to adjust accordingly as you go along perhaps, but at least it gives you a starting point.
Yes. Thank you for taking the time to put this down, because it went from this,
Yeah.
it went from this to this. So this is great. This gives us a clear direction on which we need to go, which is wonderful. And if we get through all this, then we can move on to the next thing.
Exactly.
When did you get through all this?
Yeah.
When,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes. I'm so sorry.
So then in the packet there, I mean, there's, a little more detail on each one of these goals, right? Which is, these are notices that we've already gotten before, but just to kind of reinforce that, right?
Yeah, so for example, if we wanted to target this goal number 1 to start on our October meeting, we can, in between now and then, I can try to get you some more details on the place type information that we have. We are working on kind of an outline type manual of how, like, once we get all this together, what it would look like, and then it's kind of a one-stop shop that you can have all the place types in there. And well, you have the 9 place type descriptions in here in the landscapes plan. So I think that would be my recommendation to the group in anticipation of the October meeting, really looking at the open space chapter and even the agriculture chapter of the landscapes plan. And we can kind of come in and all work with staff to identify what really the needs would be for us to kind of nail down those and adding to the place type descriptions.
And I think,
I'm sorry. I feel bad. October 28th, I'm gonna be in Memphis.
Okay.
So I'm gonna miss that, but I just letting you.
No, thank you. And we were wondering too, like if I think Tom said that like you have a new property or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, if there's any, if you ever can't make me, just let me know, and that way I won't
Okay.
get some
yeah,
materials and everything out. Yeah, no problem there.
I think as sort of a procedural point too, one thing probably worth talking about is, it sounds like we're gonna have to make a lot of decisions as a group. So, what should our decision-making process be? Do we need consensus? Do we wanna say majority rules? What people think?
Wait, are those the same thing?
What?
Consensus, or are you talking 100% consensus?
Well, yeah, that's what I meant, like, do we have to get to 100% agreement, or, yeah.
75%.
I guess easiest is majority, fastest is majority.
Yeah, I would agree.
Not always the easiest, but yeah.
That helps with, like, we had to cancel a shade tree meeting tonight because we didn't have everybody there, but we probably could have gone through if we had majority of everybody there. And so if you'll be making decisions, like if you can't make a meeting, but if we're going with 100% consensus, it's hard. So if you guys are comfortable with.
Could it even be majority of people that are here? That way we don't slow down.
Yeah, as long as you have a quorum.
What's the number for quorum?
3
3
out of this.
3 out of 5.
Yeah.
Right
Okay,
now.
cool, okay. That makes a lot easier. Okay.
Okay, so decision-making will be majority of members present at the meeting.
And that's online too, right?
Yeah,
'Cause it-
right, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
I can make, there's no issue for me for any other meetings or what's listed so far online.
Okay.
But I am gonna bring candy to the next meeting.
Sure, rub it in.
All right.
Real good candy. Josh early.
Oh, no, I won't be bringing that. That doesn't leave the kitchen.
Do we want to, well, we don't need to do it now, but we should look at that December meeting date.
I was looking at it today.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I need to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I don't know about travel,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know about what's
I would
going on.
recommend canceling that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do it like a week before? that like
Yeah, I
part
mean,
of
it's,
protocol?
Yeah, you'd have to re-advertise it though, that's the only thing.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if that's okay to keep it, because I'm just wondering with some of the things that we're doing to miss a whole month, as you're going, would that be okay to re-advertise if?
Yeah, yeah, that's no problem.
Wow.
But
So
yeah,
that would
I
be
don't
the
think,
16th.
I think the 23rd will be very problematic.
Yeah, that's what I
Yes,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I can follow up with an email with everybody about scheduling and what date specifically, because I have to look at my schedule too. I don't like whatever the third Monday.
It's the 16th, whatever,
Okay.
doesn't matter, I know you can look
Hey,
at
and would you send me all the dates so I can put it in my calendar?
Yes.
If you don't mind. When you
Yeah.
have a chance.
I like to see the 16.
I have a planner too, I thought I was the
Oh
only one
my
in the
God,
world.
oh my gosh, if I didn't have this, oh my God.
I know.
And even with it.
Wait, what is that? What,
I know.
can you explain that?
My
Okay, we're having, do
Little
you
pocket
understand?
planners.
What are you
And it's
doing?
2
Wait a
years,
minute, I don't
2
understand.
years. So it's like, oh my God, if I'm not.
Oh, if you lose that, you're toast.
Yeah.
But it goes,
Well, my wife has a big calendar, and she's
Oh,
circles on it everywhere, everything.
I got that, I got
If you lose the
There's a
calendar,
method, it's
if you lose the
like a.
calendar, our lives are over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then maybe we should, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just talking in turn, but, so our next meeting then, we're actually gonna start delving into goal number 1. That's exciting, that's great. So the 9 place types are identified in here, so that is what we're gonna be going on. And I guess from now until then, we'll get homework from you.
Yeah, if I meant to bring you guys copies of the land use portion of the comp plan. So what I'll do is I will send that out. I will send out the outline that we are playing around with that would be the pages for what's quoted as the place type guide. And if you look at page 92,
I must add, because just while we're running past to page 92, page 27,
Oh,
Marie,
you looked
you,
at this last time?
Marie, look at 27.
Okay.
you made it into the plan.
You are like power. Look at page 27.
Okay, let me see, I don't know.
I better stay on your good side. You may take my house
Oh,
out.
geez, there it is. Oh, yeah, that's me there, yeah.
You're everywhere. You're everywhere.
What page are we supposed to be on?
92.
92.
I saw that. The bar is more impressive to me. Let me put it that way.
So, like, next time, should I bring my laptop? Like, how do you want us to capture?
I'll have material sent out ahead of time. And sorry, I was going to pull up the comp plan, but I think it's too much. So if you look at those 9 categories there, the wild area, managed natural area, those are what we're considering as what we call like a use in the use schedule for the zoning ordinance, or when we start to look at right now, if we have a land development that comes in and there's open space identified on the land development, we currently look at something called prime open space and non-prime open space. It gets very complicated to what's considered prime and not prime. It's a number of features. We would essentially look to replace that and say, you have to identify one of these 9 categories as your open space. Now, it could be a number of them because you might have your utility areas, you might have your passive park area. The problem right now is it doesn't distinguish the use of the land, it's just the land itself. So all of that open space could just be stormwater basin. So this helps to distinguish what the actual use of the open space would be. We would take, what we would like to do in this exercise is try to identify the definitions so that we can incorporate that into our ordinance, so that when someone does come in to identify open space, they have a better understanding of what that means. The pages following 92 break that out. So there's a description there. We could essentially use a description like that, but I think it would be helpful to kind of narrow it down to something a little bit more universal. And this is more descriptive, and the use would be more almost regulatory, if that makes sense. And I can also provide potentially copies of the use definitions in our zoning ordinance as examples of that. So as a group, we would try to figure out what that looks like, and then we would take that back and potentially incorporate that into an update into the zoning ordinance, so that it would all be reflected in there.
So Chris, just so I understand,
Yeah.
the goal number one would be to come up with a definition for each of these 9
Yes.
categories. Okay, all right.
And that would cover the open space place type. The other place type is agriculture. So agriculture could include the same uses that are large farm, farmette, and market farm, but agriculture also might incorporate some residential use as well. So we can talk about that. We'll, as staff, we're kind of still playing around with what we want to put in there, but we'll try to have some information sent out for next month that will help guide what we put into that description of what is agriculture when you talk about what as a place. What does that mean? And I think it'll help if you see the examples of the pages that we're putting together for that place type guide.
Are there like generally accepted I don't want to say industry, but just generally accepted definition standards that we can kind of utilize to work off of and then tailor it to South Whitehall?
I think so, and that's what we started to look into some of that. The open space, no, that's where we really wanted to create this, but when it comes to agriculture, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I know that we looked into, especially when it comes to different like uses of agriculture, different like industries, whether it be like crops or animals or something like that.
Or would a farmette fall under that, or is that something we want it more tailored for here?
More tailored for
More
here,
tailored
because
for-
I think the
tailored.
farm ed is more about size rather than what it is.
Right.
It's more of a residential use. Farm ed is almost like single family residential,
Right.
but
with like a
incorporating
10-acre
open space
farm
inside.
around it.
Yes.
Okay.
Chris, could you give, at least I feel I need it, a simple example? Okay, maybe you just did that, but I'd like to break that down a bit, if that's what our goal one is, to come up with definitions. Because I'm reading what's in here. You want something more specific?
Well, unless we feel that the definitions in here work. These definitions were put together for the plan. The hope is we could just copy and paste these into our zoning ordinance. Let me see if I can pull it
Yeah,
up.
if you could pull something up and just.
Would it make sense to these classifications, a bullet list of criteria for it to be considered wild area? It needs 3 bullets, right, or something like that. And then you say, does it meet all the wild area?
Can we also give an example, maybe? Local one.
So there's kind of two sides.
That's what I thought of it, yeah.
There's that we would ordinance, and then guide that is a we as there
sewer, septic system, or whatever,
Yeah.
storm.
It's a great question. I think that goal number. Frank talked about like the sequential order of this. First, we want all an agreement in place meeting and be developing, or we would be mapping the open space under existing conditions in the township. Mapping exercise, we would prepare all everything ahead of time. We would kind of feel the across, one of our, and from there, next areas, mapping exercise. That I believe so we would mention kind of how much is in one, identify sort of the are those resources, and does that mean and incorporate that into the regulatory process to add more weight to say protecting more wild areas, passive parkland, or
The mapping kind of gives us the as-is state. There's a to-be state or a commissioner's decision.
I think we want to kind of start it here. Yes. See all of these like our meetings first exercise. Here's updates to the the open space map as developed. EAC, and then the priority areas area map that would then
I think it's in the goal, I think it's in here, I just maybe.
maybe an outcome, like a potential outcome.
Yes, yeah, maybe for each goal, we should have an outcome that can then be confirmed by the board. Like when they're approving the work plan, the outcome would be for each item, right? Like what level does it have to go back to? I mean, everything pretty much has to go back to the board.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
But we should have a list of deliverables. Right?
Exactly.
And then the board knows exactly what we're going to be giving to them, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So for all 5 of these goals, we will have the goal, we have the process, and we will have a deliverable out of that. And if we're kind of targeting one meeting for each one, or at least starting one with goal 1 at our next meeting, we can kind of go from there, and I can sort of apply the Gantt chart to that. In a perfect world, we could do one at each meeting, but I think some of them we might probably need 2 meetings, especially with the mapping exercises.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, number one seems pretty straightforward enough,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah. Okay, quick question here, Chris. I understand that we are supposed to send our recommendation or EAC to the commissioners. And it seems to me from what you're saying, there's a lot of pieces here. Some things have to be approved beyond the commissioners, as I'm understanding it. Yes,
Well,
no?
there's a prescribed adoption process that is, the commissioners must follow. Like the official map is
Yeah.
not, it's not just a resolution. They literally have to go through a public advertisement requirement. It has to be recorded at the county. It has to, literally, I think you have to send it out to specific homeowners that are impacted.
Yeah, I think we send it to neighboring
Yes.
municipalities and
Yeah, and that's all set forth in the municipality's planning code. So to answer your question, the commissioners are the final end all be all, but there's state requirements that they have to meet.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, this plan here, this is going to be available for residents in hard copy and digitally, is that correct? Both for now?
hard copy. We can't afford to print hard copies for
Okay.
everybody that asks. We have in the fee schedule. We have like whatever the fee for plans are. Like if someone wants a comprehensive plan, I think it's like $5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it would be the same with this. But yes,
Okay.
this is a plan that's up on the website now, and
Okay, so what is how will the everyday resident, okay, who attended many meetings, how will they know beyond this that their concerns are being addressed? I mean, when I listen to what we're doing and what we're saying and what we're gonna do with goals and all of this, it's a complex process, but yet the end result, are the residents going to be able to say, look at the work we've done, look at what the board says, oh yeah, I like this, we're going with it, this is good. Are the residents going to understand first and then feel, oh, our concerns are addressed in this. I can hear it, I can read it,
Yeah.
whatever. They've been addressed.
It's a loaded question only
I think
because
this part, this part is the first step of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so this was to get us going, and I think a resident could look at that and say, oh, right, they're heading in the right
Yes.
direction that was that many members of the populace, of the residents, that they wanted to see. I mean, of course, it's not not every single everyone.
Right.
There's some nuances there.
Right.
But I think it's imperative that we utilize our resources, whether it's the website, e-newsletter. We're doing now a calendar for the actual printed version of our newsletter. So I think we really need to encourage people to sign up for these things so that they can see the outcomes of this, which you're working on.
We talked about in the beginning kind of work sessions that we had the importance of, I'd say, like this group in also being that additional face to the community, as residents, talking to your neighbors and things like that. We talked about events. We talked about, some of the outreach that we could potentially do and developing some things, whether it be pamphlets, posters, what have you. I think that's where trying to also identify what the specific questions are. I mean, through this process, we heard a lot from community members who are interested in weighing in. We've taken that and now to show them, to walk them through the process of here's what this one concern has been specifically addressed. It's a much higher level sort of.
Well, we talked about deliverables, right? Each deliverable, once approved by the board, will be available to the public, right? So I think that's the way we communicate that we're addressing their concerns, right? And each one of those deliverables, residents, if they have a concern, can look at the deliverable and see, is it meeting my concern or not? Right? And then I think then we should be proactive in, once we have a deliverable that's approved, communicating that to the community, right? Either through the website or newsletter or whatever.
Or even
Or maybe having
before.
yeah.
It becomes deliverable, right? Like, so they get involved in the process of adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah,
make
I mean,
sense?
like,
Yeah.
these are public meetings, so while we're going through this, anyone can come and listen in and courtesy of the floor, ask about the process too. I mean, that, and so if we're hearing that, I think we had Cindy Rickard, who was at our one meeting. I mean, that's exactly what happened there. She had a question about something related to the type of work that we deal with. I had mentioned the landscapes plan. I had mentioned this group, and she came to a meeting and she was interested in that. And so that's always an option too. So we might fill up more if there are more concerns.
And something like the referendum will have to be widely disseminated.
Yeah.
In order to have a successful outcome.
Yeah, I mean, the updates to the official map, as Tom said, it has such a specific process to it that we'll be following anyway. I wouldn't worry too much with this group in how that gets, adopted. It's more typically when we do something like that, when it's something as a recommendation presented in front of the Board of Commissioners, it's developed either by staff or by our consultants, or if we have someone working on a project. This is kind of, we're looking to the EAC to help us develop that recommendation so that it can go to the board and they can feel comfortable understanding that staff has looked at it from, a technical standpoint. The EAC, you guys have all been, sort of ordained now as these community members focused on environmental issues for the township. And there's also the guidance of the landscapes plan. So those kind of three things together are what we're hoping will have that comfortable recommendation.
I think too, though, I don't, this is one of those things that we're not gonna get instant gratification, the community's not going to. And so, until they see like a passive park happening or an active park happening, that's really what a lot of people are gonna see and pay attention to, or a new farm, or less of a farm. So those things are gonna be really slow in coming, because, those aren't even one of our line items yet to be able to do that yet. So I think certainly we should keep people informed, but I think people are going to want to see something, and we're not going to have a lot of somethings.
Oh, I think
you know what I mean?
the to-be state is really, I think, what the residents should be able to look at and comment on, right? I mean, to me, that.
Totally fair, absolutely.
I mean, I think, once we do all this mapping and we make a recommendation as to what we want the township to look like, different than when it is today, right? I think that's where residents really need to have the opportunity to weigh in and say, that vision isn't what I was expecting, or is what I was expecting, or, or I'd like to see more of this, less. So I think that's probably the milestone where you really have to get community input.
I'm
That's
just.
true, you're right, I agree with that.
Yeah, because I'm thinking back quite a while to some of the things that were said and heard. And there was a real, I understand it, there was a real misunderstanding of zoning, of why this could happen, but this couldn't happen. Zoning is so complex. I guess at the end of the day, what I would be hoping for with what we're doing here, and Frank addressed some of that, is that the resident is going to at least be able to look at something, and if they don't completely understand, hopefully they'll understand a good bit of it, but then be able to ask questions, because, and you're not going to get everyone, and you're always going to get somebody who's going to be angry and think you did a crappy job no matter what you do, and I get that, but I just look at zoning and some of the things that we're talking about here. There's so much complexity to it, and as Tom was saying, well, now it's got to go to this group or this group. So much complexity, and that's where we have a real breakdown. People don't understand it. If it wasn't for my husband, I wouldn't understand zoning, and I don't understand it like he understands it. But you know what I'm saying? So that people just don't have that real
We did experience a lot of that with the adoption of the comprehensive plan when it got down to kind of the last stage of that and going through the adoption process, and we kind of pushed and pushed and pushed to let people know and encourage people to, you know, review the plan and come out and understand the process. And unfortunately, it really, what I found is it comes down to those one-on-one conversations.
Yeah.
When someone has a question, and like you said, if they have a concern, they'll usually come out and then they'll usually voice that concern, but that also gives you the opportunity to have more of a direct conversation to address their concern, whether it's going to be, you know, positively that you're, you know, what's proposed is going to, you know, change something that they're concerned about, or explaining the process of what your concern is, that can't be shaped differently because of this process or,
Right.
or so forth.
Right.
And so I think we can be prepared for that as staff as well. But yeah, I think it starts with just having the guidance, getting through the recommendations, and then taking it through the process. And that's where we really wanted to kind of highlight a number of these things first, because these are sort of those triggers to getting to more of the, I'll say, day-to-day functionality of this board, once we have that stuff in place. And yeah, this is this is going to be I think a learning experience for all of us as well.
Yeah.
So for goal number 1, I will provide some information. Probably next week, I'll send out some things to everyone. I will also make the updates to having kind of a deliverable identified for each of the goals, and use that to develop sort of a rough Gantt chart of where we see this progression, and where we anticipate going with our meetings, if we think we can target, you know, starting with the first meeting and then trying to move through as best as we can.
Another question? Sorry, something. I've been with organizations, this is the first time I'm hearing this. Is it an acronym? A Gantt chart? That's the first time I'm
Yeah,
hearing
it's
that term.
it's not an acronym. It's named after, I don't know the person's name, but last name is Gantt, and it's the idea of a timeline with clearly defined deliverables, so you can kind of work through. It's almost like a spreadsheet of a
Yeah,
process, and it helps you track progress or when you're hitting a wall on something. So, for example, we would say like goal number 3 really doesn't start until goal number 1 and 2 are accomplished. And in order to get to goal number 3, here we need to consider the timelines, the realistic timelines to accomplish goal number 1 and 2. So it gives more of the large picture for breaking down a number of tasks.
And for a complex task or project, it allows you to
Oh, I see. Okay.
it allows you to determine the critical path items, right? So because this can't start until this is done, kind of thing. So you can kind of go through the Gantt chart and see how long everything's going to take, and what are the things that are on the critical path that, you know, if you need to, because some things, you know, if you do it faster, it doesn't affect the overall timeline of the project, because there's nothing depending on that getting done, right? So it allows you to go through and say, these are the critical path items that determine how long the overall project's going to take. And so if I'm behind on one of these, it's going to extend the project. If I can accelerate one of these, it's going to shorten the project, right? So.
Yeah, I think it'd be really helpful, especially when we start to look at some of the more time sensitive things with like goal number 5, when we talk about the interest in a financing mechanism if we're shooting for a ballot referendum, you know, to kind of work backwards and to make sure that we can sort of accomplish the other goals in order to give us the information we need for goal number 5, and it helps identify whether there's things that we can do along the way at our meetings to help tackle some of that. So I'll try to incorporate that into the Gantt chart for our next meeting.
Are there any of these where, you know, we're going to have a deliverable will that deliverable need to be approved by the board before we can move to the next step? Or do we think we can work through all of these and come up with a whole set of deliverables before asking for board approval?
If I'm being honest, I would think the board would probably prefer to have more of it together because a lot of these tie in together instead of like we go through one meeting and then there's something, because it's only gonna be one piece of the puzzle, especially for goals number
Yeah,
1, 2, and 3.
The only flip side to that is if you're going down a certain direction with one and then that leads to the other, and it's not, maybe it wasn't consistent with what they were looking for, you know, you might want to have milestone updates along the way, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
We can definitely do that, and kind of just give them, you know, an update at a meeting to say where we are on some of this. I think kind of a more of a final finished product though for goal number 1, 2, and 3. I see those as kind of a package.
I was thinking of that too.
The reason I ask is that, I mean, if we need board approval at certain interim steps, that's gonna slow us down, right? And so if we look at a timeline, we need to consider where we need to pause and get approval and build that into our timeline, right? So,
Definitely before goal number 5. I think, you know, that's going to be dependent on board approval of the items in goals number 1, 2, and 3. And now that I'm looking at it and starting to think of kind of the Gantt chart, I'm thinking goal number 4 might be sort of later in that progression, or pieces of it might be not. I might suggest that we don't spend as much time for goal number 4 during the meetings, and that's more outside of it. And then sort of, you know, research on your own, and then once we have some of the other things identified, come back at a meeting and be prepared to talk about that more, because I think that's less time sensitive and less driven by the other goals.
I was at a meeting, I attended a board of commissioners meeting virtually, and I remember, this was a little while back, but I remember one of the commissioners asked directly, so how's it going with the EAC? And you had I can't remember your exact words, but you had a good, you know, answer for that individual, you know, it's going well, we're doing whatever, blah, blah, blah. So it was interesting that one of the commissioners asked about this group specifically.
Oh yeah, and when we adopted the comp plan last week, I mean, that they wanted to know, how does this move forward?
Okay.
And that's where we took a moment to talk about the role of this group and what we're coming through, and kind of mentioned, you know, the anticipation of the work plan, and now that this is adopted and that you guys will have your work plan figured out and we'll get that through it. It's taking a lot of the potential actions in here and actually putting them, putting action.
yeah, so presenting our work plans to the board of commissioners is the next step, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, we talked about, I think October 18th, trying to get that on the schedule for October 18th.
That's the
And
next board of commissioners meeting.
that would be the next one that we would put this on the agenda. There's another one on the 2nd, but I think we have a lot on the agenda already for that. And then I think it would be great if, you know, if Frank could be available for that to kind of run through it. I think it'd be helpful to kind of give a little bit more face to the group. And then that way too, if they have questions about some of this, we can kind of talk about the what we anticipate doing with this.
It's actually 10/16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, 10.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
I was like, wait a minute, that's a Friday.
You're having fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were just testing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm
You
looking at
passed.
this.
Really, they didn't want you showing up.
Yeah.
The truth.
are you one of those people, Marie, like July 2nd, 1903? What day of the week was it, right?
No. All I know is that she's showing us that, you would have known.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I just looked at this, and she goes, that's the meeting. I'm like, it's a Friday, they don't meet on a Friday.
Yeah, my mistake, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm like, I don't think. That would be interesting, no, I don't.
There are people who.
I know there are
crazy
people that
people
do.
Yeah.
who-
There are people that know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my gosh, if I knowing the day of the week sometimes is
Marie's not crazy, she's photographic.
So any more questions on that agenda item, or can we move on? Okay, next agenda item is, as we discussed at the last meeting, there's this effort to try and develop some kind of platform for collaboration among the Lehigh Valley EACs. The next step in that process was to get input on what are the capabilities that we want to have in that platform. And so the Allentown EAC, which is leading this effort, asked us to fill out a survey. And so hopefully everybody had a chance to do that.
Yes.
More the merrier. So the more input we have, the more influence we can have. The idea, as just to reiterate, the idea is that we're going to take that list of capabilities and present it to We Can Serve PA and see what it would take for them to develop a section of their website that would be specific to the Lehigh Valley EAC group that we could use, and see what it would require for them to do that, and then based on that response, see where we go next. All right, next agenda item, courtesy of the floor. Anything anybody else wants to bring up?
I got stuff, but it doesn't quite fit in. So it's okay.
You sure? I mean, that's what courtesy of
Yeah,
the floor
no, I
is.
know, but it's just, then it just kind of adds, you
Adds to it.
know,
There's no
what I mean.
time, right?
Yeah, it just adds things, so, but, yeah, there's some
We just
very,
have to get through the whole work plan and then.
then we can do that.
And I just want to emphasize that I am always available if anyone has questions. You can always reach out to me. I think the meetings are great for questions of the group, but if you have a question of just township process or something like that, just shoot me an email, give me a
Chris
call.
knows. He
Yeah.
knows. I called him on a Friday morning about trash on Mechanicsville Street. Who is this crazy person?
So he knew.
Yeah.
He knew it was. And I'm like, I know this sounds ridiculous, I'm sorry, but this is a big mess, blah, blah, blah. And he responded.
Yeah, if he starts blocking your number.
Yeah, I think it actually shows up as your husband when
Yes,
it comes
does.
through, yeah.
It does show up as my husband saying, yes, see, you never know. That was funny though, but yeah, I know, and yeah, there's just a few things I've been thinking about, but it's a good idea, like run past you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and we can always, I can, add it to the agenda if we want to add it to
Yeah,
the
again,
agenda.
I mean, we do want to capture
Mhm.
ideas for other things we should be working on.
Right,
You know,
yeah, good idea. Yeah.
even though we're going to focus on this for now, I mean, we
Right.
certainly have broader obligations as an environmental advisory committee beyond just this plan. So,
Okay.
all right, make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
Okay,
Second.
okay, good. All right, and we are adjourned.
All
Great,
right.
thank you.